Welcome to the Sharpe Way show. So happy to have you with me this evening, a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I am here today talking about a very interesting topic. And I know a lot of people have asked me, Larry, you don't really talk about the Ukraine war much. Not really a thing you do. I tend to talk more about domestic policy. That's true. I spend a lot of my time actually talking about New York even. So I sometimes even go even deeper. But I thought if I'm going to talk about the Ukraine war, let me talk about somebody who's been there, who's actually been there and seen some stuff, and give us some insight that you can't actually just see on some TV station or on some mainstream news. So I'm bringing to you today a very interesting guest, a man who has gone from being a plumber, believe it or not, to a soldier, yes, to an author, and now a trainer or something. He's something else cool. The man himself, Michael McGarrey. How are you, sir?
Hello, everyone. I'm good. I'm actually currently in Moldova. So
there we go. I'm not sure if that's good or not, but okay.
It's better than it was. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, better than it was. I do like that. And guys, if you want to, you can follow him on Twitter at Michael McGarrey with an E1. It's right there if you check on the bottom of your screen. Or also you can see on the show description, you can also purchase his book if you want to. The link is right there on both YouTube and Facebook. So, Michael, let me ask you. You went to Ukraine to train Ukrainian soldiers, correct?
Yes. Originally, I went there. Let's see. I originally got to Ukraine. I crossed the border for the first time into Ukraine March 13th, 2022. So,
wow.
So February 24th is when the war invasion started.
Yep.
March 13th is when I crossed the border.
What makes somebody pack up and go, you know what? I'm going to go ahead into a war zone. That seems a little bit odd to me, Mike. I'm telling you the truth. It seems odd. What makes a guy do that?
Man, you know, the way that whole thing played out was pretty weird. I was actually just on my last round of revisions for Life's Memorable Moments. I was sitting. You're right. And I was sitting at my laptop, you know, going through the last little bit of revisions.
Yep.
And this would have been the 27th of February.
Okay.
And a message popped up on social media from somebody. He's like, going, "Hey, I'm putting a team together to go to volunteer in Ukraine as instructors. You want to go?" And like, without even thinking about it, I said, "Yeah, why not?"
So hold on. So wait a minute, you're a volunteer?
Yep. 100% volunteer.
Hold on. Now, wait a minute. You're a volunteer. I automatically assume that some big, contractor is writing you checks for six figures. I think that's everybody's assumption. That's right. The lunatic libertarian pops up right away and says, "How much were you paid for your skill sets?" He's thinking the same thing, right?
Nothing.
Wow.
Zero. I didn't. The entire time I was there, I never received a single dime, and and I didn't even ask for anything either. Like even in the very beginning, for the first, I guess, 6 months I was there. I started with one organization that petered out and didn't really even get going, and then I went with another organization that also fell through, and then I stayed on my own and just continued, because by that point I had already made contacts with individuals.
So do you speak the language?
No, I had to organize all my own interpreters and everything.
Wow.
It was it was a really big challenge.
Do a lot of people there?
Okay, so there aren't very many people that. Okay, so I heard this really great way of how they put this is that they like to say they're like dogs, right?
Okay.
They can understand, but they can't speak it. So they can understand.
Yes.
They can understand English, but they can't speak it.
Got it.
And
I understand. Sam
but
says, man, God bless. So you have someone on your side, my friend. You have someone on your side. There we go.
yeah,
Someone is. All right. So you head over
and
there, you start training these people. Who are you
mhm.
training? Are you training like reservists heading back into the field? Are you training green people who like don't know anything? Are you training draftees? Are you training volunteers? Who
Through the course of 2 years, it's all the above,
mm,
right? When I first got there, the first let's see, I got there in March. By the last week of March, and through most of April, I actually started teaching tactical combat casualty care, which is
sure.
basically just battlefield first aid,
First aid.
right?
Yep. I've been
Yeah,
through it.
yeah. It's just, only like, so when you think of first aid in the States, you think more like trying to keep everything as clean as possible
Right.
and whatnot.
Right.
Whereas on the battlefield, it's just stop the bleeding.
Keep them alive.
y- Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Do
Yes.
whatever it takes to stop the bleeding and get them, stabilize them enough to
Get them moving.
transport. Right.
There we go. Yes, 100%.
So,
I still remember mine. I was a Marine many years ago, but I've never forgotten.
yeah,
I've never forgotten.
yeah.
100%. It's
And
forever.
then, but like the big thing is you get these guys that come over that are like these, medical doctors, whatever else, and they try to overthink it. Because as American soldiers, we're
Oh,
used to having everything we need, right? Like we get
right.
the IFAC, the individual first aid kit, right? And in that thing is pretty much everything you need
Yes.
to save yourself, right?
Right.
I mean, you get some high speed ones, and they'll have IVs and stuff if you need to, right?
100%. Yeah. No, I get that
Well,
completely. I can see how a doctor could come in and not understand the expediency that you require in a battlefield, particularly in a world where that heavy minefields, so lots of limbs
mhm,
being blown and trashed and broken, lots of that, right? Limbs
mhm,
brings up tourniquets, right? So, yep, all
right.
of course, right? All that kind of stuff, and also drone strikes that come out of nowhere. I mean, there's a
Well, that's a
lot
new
of stuff out of nowhere.
so the whole drone thing really was something I had to adapt to, right?
Mhm.
Because that wasn't something that we had to deal with in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right,
Like, and that's going to be a big game changer going forward with future
100%.
wars to come, right? We can talk about that a little bit later, but the big thing, especially in the beginning, was how little these people had as far as medical stuff, like individual medical equipment,
Got it.
right? So in the beginning, one of our main focuses were trying to get things like tourniquets and um, Israeli bandages and all these different and like combat gauze and whatever else into to get to individuals after we gave them a 3 or 4
Right.
day crash course in first aid.
So let me
And
walk
then
down a road real fast. I want to ask this piece now.
okay,
I know as a Marine, 13 weeks in boot camp, and then
yeah,
at least 6 weeks after that in infantry school.
right.
And then, I mean, right. So we're talking 6 months before I see the field, right? I mean,
Yeah,
literally like
the
six
army
months
was the
before I see the
same
field.
way. Yeah,
Same
yeah,
idea, right? What about
right.
these guys? How much time from when they walk in their room till they get in the
Oh,
field?
so I will say this: the longest I think I ever had a group was 2.5 weeks. So yeah,
Hold on, hold on. Are you
yeah,
telling me that they got 2.5 weeks training and then we're
mhm,
fighting Russians?
right, yeah. When some I'd only get for less than a week. So, and the bad thing about that is like, especially in the beginning. In the
You're
beginning, like
sending them to their death.
essentially, yeah, it was really rough, right? Because, and what was even
Wow.
worse about it is like a lot of these guys had never even, so like as an American, it's hard for us to wrap our head around the idea that like some of these guys had never seen a weapon
Yep.
before, right? And because they're not really allowed to have them, right?
Right.
And then the war kicks off, and now they're like just trying to hand anybody who
Right.
wants one a weapon. And so some of the first groups I was teaching had never even held a weapon, and I'm having to teach them like day zero, uh, how to manipulate a weapon.
Here's what a magazine is.
Right,
Right.
exactly. This is
Yes,
a,
absolutely.
and it's an AK, right? So
Sure.
you know
Yeah.
anybody who's used to the AR platform or M4
Very different.
platform, it's different, right?
Yep.
And like for instance, on the M4, the safety is here. You manipulate with your thumb. Well, on the AK, it's over here, and you use your pretty much your whole hand, right? And and so I'm having to teach them, you know, weapon manipulation. Like I basically just started with ready ups. You know, like up
Holy cow.
here, move when your weapon comes up, it goes on fire.
You
When it
know,
goes down, it goes.
I was remembering how, I watched so many of them move, and it
Mhm.
looked like they were just school kids moving.
It's
And now
essentially
I
is
know
what it
why.
is.
Yes, they weren't
Yeah.
moving like Marines move. Like Marines
Right.
move in the field differently. Like we move differently. They were moving like kids. Now I understand why they were moving like kids. It
Right.
makes total sense.
Right. And it's and so like basically it was um and then so my first group of guys that I actually got to teach actually combat stuff, I only had them for like 3-4 days, and then they were just I showed up one day and they had been shipped out, right?
Wow.
And I was like going, okay, so
Okay,
after
so
that,
hold on. I want to move to that step. You mentioned that
okay.
that piece. How you said supplies were tough. Mike asked a
Mhm.
question. He says, "Has he real world seen the results of U.S. funds? Is the lack or slowdown had a real world impact? In other words, did you see when they were saying, 'Hey, America's giving money,' or the Germans are sending stuff? Could you see that come in, or did that not affect you, or did it affect you?"
It did. Okay, so I was there for probably at least 6 months to maybe almost a year before the United States really started sending aid,
Ah, okay.
right? Because from let's say again, I got there in March, so I don't think I started seeing actual real like aid coming in until probably November of that first year of
Okay.
2022. And even then it was trickle, right?
Okay.
Because everybody was still worried about this whole like, well, Russia's going to launch a nuke if we give too
Oh,
much
right.
aid,
Yep. I remember that. Yep.
you know? And so which in my opinion is all a farce, right? Like they just they throw that out there because and they know that's a good way to get the United States and everybody else to back off,
So,
right?
so let me walk on
Um
that road real fast. Let me talk about the Russians, if I could. Have
okay.
you met any, or either on the front line, or have you met any EPWs? Any Russians? Have you met Russians that are fighting on this war?
No,
Okay.
no. I because and that's the thing, right? Like because there are probably there are some that are some floaters
Sure.
in wherever in Ukraine, whatever, but I didn't meet any except for when I was actually close to the front, which they call the zero line, right? And but like they're the guys shooting in my direction, right? So I'm not having a conversation with them.
Right.
So,
Right. 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 Yep.
but
Yep.
but no, I mean like I didn't meet any no, and I didn't see
Okay.
any EPWs. I mean that's
Do
because that just wasn't something that was part of my
do you have
scope.
any idea how much training the Russians had in comparison to the Ukrainians? Do you know if they were better trained, the same trained? Do you know?
I'm gonna say I will say they're better trained, I
Better
guess,
trained.
but it's 1980s Soviet tactic better trained, right?
Ah, okay.
So
Got it.
I'm not saying that they're well trained. I'm just saying
Got it.
that at least they have some sort of training, right?
Understood. Yes, yes, yes.
What
Oh, hold on one
what
second.
the
Gene asks, what's an EPW? An EPW is an enemy prisoner of war. That's the new POW. They used to be called POWs, but now when
right,
we say POWs, we think of Vietnam. So they wanted to get rid of
right,
that thought process, that brain process of Vietnam. So we don't say POW anymore. We say EPW, enemy prisoner of war. That's what EPW is. Thank you for
Yeah.
that, G. So sorry.
No
So
problem.
keep going. I apologize. I wanted to take care of that question. So you're saying
So
they're trained well, but they're trained in old tactics. They're trained the old way. Got it.
Right. And the big benefit that Russia has over Ukraine, the major benefits they have over Ukraine is manpower, air superiority, and just what seems to be a almost unlimited supply of rockets and artillery.
That seems like some really big benefits.
They are huge. I mean, the biggest one's air superiority, right? So, this is what since I first got to Ukraine and I got to go to the front the first couple of times, was like, until we get some way to where we can at least shut the airspace down and make it a fair war, or ground war, then it's just going to be you're looking at basically a stalemate where Ukraine's going to have more losses, right?
That doesn't sound good for Ukraine.
It's right, but here's the thing: is like, so now Poland and everybody are talking about giving F-16s. This is kind of relatively new development. It's, I think, around the first of the year, I guess, is when, or maybe it was towards the end of last year, really, is when they started talking about getting F-16s in there. And I'm just like, oh, you're $1 late in dime, it's you're a little late you're a little late to the game,
So let me shift to the piece if I could. You've spent time yourself in Afghanistan and Iraq, correct?
Yes, both.
I feel like, just an outsider, right? I was in the Marines back in the 90s, so I did not see Iraq. I was in during the first Gulf War. So I'm an outsider looking in now, right? And I've heard stories from a lot of my Marine brothers from Iraq and Afghanistan, particularly Iraq. Not as much Afghanistan. Mostly I've heard a lot from Iraq. I feel like Iraq and Afghanistan were different, but that Ukraine is even way different than both. Is that true?
It is. Yeah, it is. And there's a couple of things that make it a lot different, right? It's like the big thing, the thing that stands out the most to me is when you're in Iraq and Afghanistan, the war is all around you. Like, there isn't a front. The front is everywhere, right? Like, I mean,
it's like Vietnam.
You're not even safe on your fob, right? Or your patrol base or whatever, right? Whereas here in Ukraine, unless you're like right on the front, you wouldn't even know there's a war going on, except for like an occasional rocket strike. I mean, shops are open. I can get coffee, like, depending on where you are, right? Like, my apartment, when I wasn't teaching or whatever, was about 3 hours as a drive. About 3 hours drive south of Kyiv, right on the Dnipro River, right? So I was pretty much right in between Dnipro and the city Dnipro and Kyiv. And there, I mean, you wouldn't even know there's a war going on. We got rocket strikes about once or twice a month, but you spend enough time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and
that's nothing.
That doesn't even, it doesn't bother you too much.
Right.
But
I mean,
so
the front line is a key piece. It's much more like a World War II or Korea compared to Vietnam or that.
Right.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay, no, that's good. That's what I kind of had a feeling. Let me talk to my audience for a second. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Click the button that is like. Click the button that is like now. I'm talking about stuff like war, so they're going to demonetize me. So since they're going to demonetize me, be good to me and click that like button because you like it. If you are watching this on X or on Twitter, retweet this or re-X this or repost this, whatever read the thing. Do that thing, redo it. It's important. Please do it. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't. If you don't subscribe, I'm going to take it as you hate soldiers. So that means you hate soldiers if you don't subscribe. So please subscribe right now. If you want to super chat me, you can to support the show. But something else, Michael's being very good to us. He's given us so much time. Do me a favor, follow him on Twitter, right there. You can see his Twitter handle right there. It's also in the show description. And if you like what he's saying and you think he's a good guy, then buy his book. He's volunteering. The link is on Amazon right there. Click that link. Go buy his book. It's a good book. Go buy it. So it's a nice thing if you would do that. I would appreciate that. Let me keep going if I could. Trench warfare. Everybody thought that Ukraine was going to be World War III, and we found out it's World War I.
Yeah, basically. Well, it's kind of
Yes.
okay. So it is. It's kind of a mixture. I guess it's a mixture of World War I and World War II, because in certain parts, when you get outside of the big cities, like, if you get outside of Bakhmut, which is pretty much all with all the artillery now, it's pretty flattened, but you get outside the cities and whatnot, that's where you get your trench warfare. But then you get inside the cities and it's urban, right? So you're, room clearing, essentially. And only it's room clearing in the sense of where you've got just the town's been pretty much just rocketed to shit, right? Pardon my language.
It's basement clearing, basically.
Essentially, right.
It's rubble.
And you're just going through, it's just rubble. So like your, trip hazards are insane.
I imagine. Yes.
Like even if I had, like, let's say you put me back with one of my Army infantry teams where we work together day in, day out forever, we'd still have trouble, right? Sure. We would win just because our tactics are so much superior to Russian 80s tactics now, because we have 20 years of experience with it now. But the trip hazards definitely makes room clearing even more difficult, and trench warfare sucks. I mean, especially when the weather turns bad, when it's, snowing, there's mud down at the bottom of the trench and you just never get out of it, and yeah, I mean, dude, go ahead.
So let me keep going here. What about Ukrainian leadership, right? What I've heard that they still follow a Russian model mostly, and that it's generally all the troops are kind of just all troops, and then the officers run everything, versus I know in the Marine Corps, I'm sure you're aware of this, me being a Marine, it's like 1 in 12. There's very few Marine Corps officers. NCOs do everything.
I think the Marine Corps does the exact same thing as our Army does, is where we have what's called a span of control, right? Which is 3 to 5, right?
Correct.
You have a team leader that's in charge of 3 dudes. You have a squad leader that's in charge of the other 2 team leaders, right? And whereas, and everybody has the role if my team leader goes down, the next dude picks up and takes command, right? Or if for some reason I get separated, I make my own decisions to stay alive, right? And where my ultimate goal is to relink with my unit, but whatever I do between that and that is on me, right? Whereas, and this was one of those big problems that we had when we first got there, especially, was we were teaching them, like, for instance, if anybody knows anything about room clearing, one man is almost always going to get shot. Like, if I'm going to be one man through a door, I want to be one man through the first door, because at least then it's a surprise. But every door after that, one man is probably going to get shot, right? And the idea is that, or if what we're trying to teach them, if one man gets shot in the doorway and he goes down, 2 man steps over him and secures the objective, right?
Sure.
And we were trying to teach them, like, hey, mission first, right? If a guy goes down, the best way to save that guy is to secure
make him safe.
Right, exactly.
Make him safe, yes. Make him safe to get him out of there. Absolutely, 100%.
Exactly. Well, trying to explain that to them was, like, just mind-boggling to them, right? They were looking at us with disgust, like we were, like, telling them to leave their guys behind. Like, oh no, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying secure the battleground first, and then worry about getting your guys, right? Or at least give your medic a wall of lead to hide behind while he gets the casualties, whatever. Anyway, so that was really hard.
They would be tough to figure this out, because they would want officers there to give them the orders, and it's
Exactly.
challenging them to do that. Got it. Okay. I have a
And
question
that was
asking about you, personal question. Mike, where's your true home? Where are you from?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we
Born and
go.
raised. I I even rode bulls and stuff back in high school. So
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, so let me keep walking down that road then. Is the Russian leadership and Ukrainian leadership then very similar styles, or no?
From what I can surmise, again, I don't know a whole lot about the Russian military except for what we read, but we all kind of
Mhm.
read the Russian military wrong, right? We all thought they would steamroll Ukraine, and
Mhm.
here we are 2.5 years later, and they're still basically not making any ground at all, right?
Absolutely.
And what I really blame the majority of that on is failure of logistics on the Russian side, right?
Okay.
They're in the very beginning, there were tanks running out of fuel because didn't have leave a lane open for fueling trucks to come in and refuel their tanks.
Got it.
So, like very early on, you see tractors, farmers pulling Russian tanks, right? Like
Wow.
Ukrainians.
I remember that. Yes. I remember that. Oh, that's
Yeah,
why they're running out of fuel.
yeah, yeah. They're running out of fuel.
Ah.
So I
Wow.
think I
Wow.
know a couple of guys who actually have a Russian tank in their garage. So so
Well, yep. Okay. There we go. So
yeah.
I guess you're talking about the difference between the two wars. I appreciate that. But now let
Mhm.
me ask something else. You've been training people there for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Have they
Mhm.
have the people coming to you changed? In other words, are they younger, older, happier, not as happy, are more draftees, more volunteers? Have the people changed in the time you've been there who are coming to you?
Yeah. I mean, so I kind of started getting away because what was happening was I was trying to teach people that basically just got their draft orders.
Yep.
And so I was training them up or trying to, and then like 5 days later they're gone. Right.
Mm,
So I kind of try to like so every 3 months I had to leave, right? Because they still have their visa rules, right? Which seems
oh,
weird
got
to
it.
me, even though there's a war zone going on and I was there as a volunteer, but whatever. Anyway, um, so when I came back, I had kind of like changed gears. When I came back the first time, I had changed gears and I didn't go all the way back to the States. I just went to Italy or something,
Hmm.
right? And which also kind of gave me a good idea, like what the different countries of the EU were, how they were viewing the war, right? Which we can get into a little bit. But so what I did was I went from teaching draftees to teaching people that had signed up for the draft but hadn't been drafted yet,
Ah,
right?
okay.
And so I was basically trying to focus on the ages between 18 and 25, right? Or
Got it.
30, right? Um, if I got anybody who was, say, close a little over the age of 45, which is like I'm 43 now, so then it's like you need to be in some sort of relatively decent shape because
Sure.
I'm gonna work you pretty hard, right?
Right.
Especially since I might only have 2 weeks to
Yep.
work with you, right? So it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be a hard two
Yep.
weeks.
Right.
So anyway, and then it got to where I was like, whoever wanted to show up, like my focus is going to be on the draftees, right? The potential
Got it.
draftees.
Yep.
But if any civilians want to show up or whatever, then they're welcome to come along
Got it.
also. Just
Got
if
it.
we can work you in and whatever
So
else.
let me ask
And
about that piece, right? I hear
mhm,
the problem is if you go on YouTube to see what's happening, you know,
mhm,
who knows? Everyone says what they think is right, right? It's very much become like you're pro Russia, you're pro Ukraine, whatever. I'm going to ask
right.
your opinion being there. Do most in people you met, do most of the Ukrainians you meet, are they sick of the war, or are they happy to fight the war? Do they want to fight? Are they like, why are we doing this? Where's their head? And you've been there for
Yeah,
a couple of years now, so
yeah.
has it
So
become more and more like, let's get these Russians, or is it more and more like, why the hell are we fighting? What are the people thinking that
it's
you're meeting?
okay. So it's changed a lot over the last two, because it's war fatigue, right? After 2.5
Ooh,
years,
okay.
you kind of get that it's not like us going to Iraq and Afghanistan, because we're there for a year and we come home for 6 months, right?
Right,
Well,
right,
they're having to live in it, right?
right.
So you get, and there's air raid sirens every night, and that's tiring, and people drown it out until actually rocket hits, and then they're freaked out for about a week, and then it's all back to whatever, right? Um, in the very beginning, it was all like, yeah, let's go kick their ass, right? Like,
Right.
let's everybody wanted to get a piece, right? But now, um, you're having this is one of those this is kind of going to touch on that corruption part. There's a lot to get into as far as corruption goes,
Okay.
uh, but like, you're actually like there's draft dodgers, right?
Sure.
And you're going to have that in any war. I don't give it
Yep.
anybody like we have it, right?
We have it too.
Um,
100%. Yes, I agree.
yeah. So, um,
But if I get what you're saying that early on, more
yeah,
people were motivated to go in. Now people are getting
exactly.
war fatigue, and
To,
less of them want to go in.
I guess a better way to explain it would be like this. So, like, when I first got there, they had more people trying to join than they could take, right?
Ooh.
Like, it was like,
Okay.
we're full. We don't want to take any more, right? And now it's like they're lowering the draft age. I think it was 25. They're lowering it down to like 21, right? There's still like, anybody from the age of like 15 to 65, I think it is, can't leave the country, right?
Right.
Unless you've already served an X amount of time, right? And then you can get, like, I don't know, a 36-hour pass, or don't quote me on that, but something along those lines of a leave, right? Um, but anyway, but now it's like they're lowering the age and they're having a hard time filling numbers. And even then, there's stipulations, there are rules to, like, where you can get out of the draft if you have, if you fill a certain service. We would call it, like,
Oh, I
we
see.
learned we learned this
Essential
during
service or something
COVID.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah, we
essential.
learned this in COVID, that essential worker BS,
Right.
right?
Right.
Whereas, like, I mean, I don't know what essential, like, anybody who needs a job is.
Probably somebody who pays or is connected to the government is probably
There
essential.
you go.
There we go.
Exactly.
Yes, that's how that works.
So, but
So
what
let
they've
me ask the
started.
next piece though. Hold on. The
Okay.
part that I've heard, and again, I'm hoping you'll clarify this. I've heard that there's a lot of wounded, like tens of thousands of wounded people who are in Ukraine now. Is that real? And does that affect people? Are there really people who are, lost their limb or are in a wheelchair or things like that? Is that a thing, or is that just propaganda?
Yeah, I mean, so it's, again, it's like any other war, right? Like, you can't go through 2 years of freaking sustained combat without having casualties of some sort,
Course.
right?
But the problem is, no
And
one, if you ask the people who are pro-Ukrainian, will very
mhm,
often say, oh, it's hardly any. And the people who are pro-Russian will go, there's millions. So I
right.
don't know what the
Right.
reality is, right?
So the propaganda war on both sides is strong, right?
Yes.
Like, incredibly strong. And
Yes.
I've never seen propaganda like this before, you know. And I mean, don't get me wrong, United States is pretty good with propaganda too, but these guys, they take it to a whole nother level. And so, but I would say, numbers wise, like, it's nothing like I would expect to see as a soldier, right? Like, as an infantry guy, where, like, you come home from Iraq and Afghanistan, especially like someplace like Texas or wherever, where you have a high population of veterans, you're going to see high populations of wounded,
Right.
walking wounded or whatever.
Yep.
I will say this: in the future, when the war is over, there's going to be serious problems with PTSD, right? Like that's going to be
Mm.
a major thing because so many were just so quickly thrown into the war with
Right.
so little training that their brains, like, one of the things that people don't realize about the United States training mechanism for soldiers is that 16 weeks is more is isn't yes, it's a lot of physically training, but it's also mentally training you up.
Absolutely. I
You know,
remember
like,
me breaking that training was hard, right? I
yeah,
spent, when I came out of Marine Corps boot camp, I was ready to like kill people. Like I was ready to
yeah,
go. Like
yeah,
I was prepared. There's a story you might, I don't know if you have this in the army too, but there's a joke about after you come boot camp, you get a little bit of a break and then you go to your school, infantry school, whatever the case may be, right?
mhm.
And how many come there with black eyes or broken arms or broken legs because they left boot camp, went home, thought they could fight the entire town. So they
Yeah,
went. So
that
they
happened
went
to
back.
me.
Yes, they
Yeah,
went back to beat up all the bullies that used to
yeah,
mess with them. And you're
essentially,
not that
yeah,
awesome. There's like 6 of them and one of you, so you're getting your butt kicked.
yeah,
But you
of
thought you
course,
could beat them all, and you weren't even afraid. And you took a couple out,
right,
but you still
yeah,
got knocked out. So
yeah,
yes, I totally get it.
completely. And so that's one of those things that, like, I always, like, I try to tell people, and like it, and this is kind of like we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but in I experienced it a lot with when I was teaching Ukrainians. Is it, you know, I remember in basic, we would sit there and we do ready ups all day long until it was like us moving that selector switch from safe to semi and back was a, like breathing, right?
I can
Well,
still do it. I haven't been a Marine in 30 years, active duty. I haven't
exactly.
been active Marine in 30 years. I can still do this. I can still do it. Yes,
So
I'm
exactly,
saying.
exactly. I almost feel like somebody puts an M4 in my hand. I feel like where have you been? You know, like like it's like saying hello to an old friend. But these guys, like, they want to jump straight into room clearing, right? Because that's
Mm,
what Call of Duty is, right?
right, right.
And I'm like going, guys, like, you don't know how much training goes in before
Yes,
you get to that level, right? Like,
right.
we there's buddy movements we got to cover. And then there's like teaching you how to actually clear a room. Like, there's a science to it. It's not like you just
Yes,
go in, right? Everybody has a place that they're supposed to go. And if you and like the only way you come out of room clearing without dying is everybody doing their piece of the pie,
100%.
like a chaotic dance, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And even then, someone's still going to get shot. You know, like
So,
room clearing
well,
is the most
at least
dangerous thing.
shot at.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully, only shot at. But yes.
So so
So
anyway, like,
I'm glad you went down that road of the people being different because my worry is, and I told a friend of mine this last year when someone said, Larry, how come you don't talk about the Iraq, the war in Ukraine? How come you don't push it? And I was very kind of callous, and I didn't mean to be mean, but I said, I just feel like it's not going to be a victory for anybody. We're going to be
mhm,
here a year from now with the lines being close to the same, maybe off one way or the other, because it's
yeah,
trench warfare. That was my worry. A bunch more people, Russians, Ukrainians, are going to be dead. A bunch more going to
mhm,
be wounded. A bunch more money thrown in the garbage, right? A bunch more thrown in the garbage. And to no avail. Like, I don't want,
yeah.
that's how I feel, right? And so I can understand why people will get tired of this and not want to do it. Do you
Well,
feel that same
go
way?
ahead. So one of the things that I said, like, after only being in Ukraine for 6 months, was I was telling this to Ukrainian people. It's like, y'all need to win this within the first year, or bef- shortly, a year or a year in 3 months, right?
Right.
Because what I was most afraid of was like, y'all need to win this before anybody else gets involved in it, right? Because once people figure out how to make money with this
Bingo.
war, it'll never
Bingo.
end. It'll never end.
Yep.
And
Yes.
it,
Once the grift happens, we're in
mhm,
Afghanistan for 20 years.
that's exactly
Grifting the
right.
whole way.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly right. And now these are where these parts of like the whole the foreign aid thing is just really started irritating me. It's part of the reason why I've decided to say goodbye to Ukraine. Is
Mm.
is it like, look, guys, like y'all have gotten just from the United States alone, you've gotten $80 billion, right? Like,
More than
or
that already.
more, I guess.
Yep. More than that. We've
And
already broken 100 billion. Yep.
and I'm like if you can't win this with $80 billion, and you're not going to win it, like
There we go.
Like, I
Yes.
mean, because I'm this is what I mean. So I have friends that are, Rangers and whatever else and blah blah blah. And I even got some guys that are still active duty. And I was talking to him like, God, like, dude, you give me $80 billion, I'm gonna go out and hire some of the most badass mercenaries you've ever met for in your life, and this thing's gonna be over in 3 weeks.
Yep.
Right? Like, I'm gonna buy the artillery that I need. I'm gonna get a couple of freaking badass freaking chopper pilots and some freaking awesome freaking paramilitary dudes that are freaking on the market. And this thing's going to be over in 4 weeks because we'll put together an op and this thing will be done.
So
Right?
let me walk down that road. You brought up a very
Okay.
important piece, right? I feel like the private sector
Hmm.
is both good and bad here, right? I
Yep.
feel like it's both. And most people would say, well, no, private armies are better with the Wagner group, right? They're the good ones, whatever. Or,
Wagner Group sucks, by the way, but
but you know what I'm saying? That's what people
but
say,
yeah, I
right?
get what
They
you're
say,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. This is the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, isn't it just another way of making money now?
It
Right?
is.
Isn't this it's
Yeah.
another way of making money, and government gets their cut off of this? And I feel
Well,
like
yeah.
once you get the private sector in here and the government makes their cut, now it almost makes sense to keep the war going,
Hmm.
right? Because what happens to all these people who are making money when the war ends?
Exactly. So here's so I have, okay, I don't know if this is exactly what's happening, but this is where my brain goes when I start trying to put all this together, right? The reason why Poland and everybody are giving their F-16s to um, Ukraine and whatnot, and they're not giving them. I guarantee you, Ukraine's buying them with U.S. dollars, right? Like,
Right.
they're not being given away. But what's happening is those same countries that are giving those F-16s away, which are made by Lockheed, by the way. No, you don't know that the F-16 is made by Lockheed. Well, people like Poland and Denmark and whatever else, they are already buying the F-35,
Right.
which is also made by Lockheed. So
Right.
all that's happening is they're getting rid of one aircraft to make room for another aircraft, and Lockheed's still making billions off of just another war, right?
Yep.
And um and then this, I mean, like, to me, it's if you want to know why this war's not over yet, just follow the money. And
That's my worry.
yeah, because
So
in my
what
opinion, if what I would do if I were Ukraine is I'd have took that $80 billion, I'd have opened up my own ammo production capabilities, right there in Ukraine somewhere, probably close to the Romanian border or something like that, far enough away from the front, but still inside of Ukraine, and done like we did with World War II, right? Like, we got hit on December 7th, 1941. By July 5th of 42, we're flying a bomber out of
right.
Lockheed.
Right, right,
I
right, right,
mean,
right. Yes.
it wasn't Lockheed then; it was Convair, but still. But the thing is,
Yeah.
like, I mean, everybody who didn't go to war went to supporting the war effort,
Right.
right?
Right. Is
And
that
like
not happening right now in Ukraine?
no, it's not. And it's one of those things that I really anybody I could get to listen to me, any high-ranking official I could get to have a conversation with me on a serious matter other than, combat tactics and whatnot. I was like, well, I don't know why y'all aren't doing this, but y'all should be. Like, if
Mm,
y'all really wanted to win this thing, this is what y'all would be doing. Like, look at what the United States, like, I love America, obviously, but I'm not just saying this because I'm an American. I'm saying this because this is what America did that
right.
ended the freaking World War II.
Right.
People want to sit there
So
because,
hold on. So what you're saying is what I hear, and again, I don't know this. So I'm glad you're here to kind of tell me your view on this. I hear all the time that Ukraine is corrupt, horribly corrupt,
Mhm.
and the money is going into oligarchs and blah blah blah. Have you seen any evidence of this? Do you think this is true?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that. So here's the thing about the corruption in Ukraine. The corruption in Ukraine is so bad they don't even realize it's corruption, right?
Wow.
So
So it's just
they
the
did
regular. That's the way they do
yeah,
business.
that's just the way the business has always been done, right? And this has a lot to do with that. This also plays into how the military rank structure operates as well. Is
So you're getting
because
promoted because of that too.
right, exactly. And on top of that, like this is part of the reason why you have commanders that are 600 meters or further, you know, 6 kilometers or maybe more from the actual front line making decisions for the people on the front line because they don't want to give up the power of making decisions. Because if somebody below them starts doing too well, that person will get promoted and take their spot, and then they lose their power. Right? Where United States military, we believe in our subordinates make
Yes.
us look good, right? Like
Correct.
because we've taken the time to train them to do so well that their how they perform is represented by on us, right?
Right.
They don't see it that way. And me trying to put that concept into them was like pulling teeth, right? Like
Got it.
it was just something they didn't even want to entertain because then you have commanders and officers trying to or letting go of that power, and they don't want they care more about holding on to their power than they do about winning the war. Now,
Got it.
take that to the civilian sector where people are making money by producing fake documents to prevent people from having to sign up for the draft, right? Or
Really? That's a thing,
yeah, oh
huh?
yeah, yeah, that's big
Okay.
business. There was a lady, a nurse at one of the hospitals that I used to kind of roam through and do combat lifesaver classes in, where she got popped, and I don't remember how much it was that she made, but it was a lot. She was getting a lot for them. It was like I don't know, $5,000 a pop, right? Which is a lot of money there, right?
Yeah.
Um,
5,000 bucks is a lot of
and
money, period.
yeah,
Money.
right. But like
Yeah.
to them, think of it this way. So I think when I left Ukraine, like it was 40 hryvnia Ukrainian was $1 US,
Okay.
right? So and I could get yeah, it was insane. Like it was
Okay.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
you're saying there's inflation there now.
yeah. Well, I mean, no, I mean like it's just $1 American goes a long way in
Oh,
Ukraine,
and she got like
right?
5,000 bucks. So yeah, she's doing very
A,
well.
a
I got
pop,
it.
a
Okay.
pop, yeah.
I got
And
you.
like
Okay.
they now they busted her. I think maybe two other people as well, like um different hospitals. But of the three that they caught, there's 100 others that are doing the
Of
same
course.
thing,
Yes.
not getting caught,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And
And
she
with
was probably the reason why she got caught was she didn't want to give enough of a cut to the guy above her.
exactly,
That's why she got caught. She was being greedy.
The cop that busted her was like going, either give me this and like.
That's correct. Yes. Yes. That's what happened.
I mean,
he wanted a bigger cut. She didn't want to give it, so she got arrested.
Right. And like, and like I said, like, and then on top of that, like, and I say this now because I have no plans on going back to Ukraine anytime soon. So I'm not too worried about it. But like another thing
before you go there, you just said this. So do you feel like for you, it's over? It's done deal. Don't bother going back. It's over for you.
Yeah. I mean, I will never go back in the same entity as an instructor. I might go back to visit friends or whatever, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go back to ever be part of the war effort or anything like that. It just
is your opinion. Is your opinion that that it's a lost cause?
No, I think there's a very good. There's an avenue to win, right?
For the Ukrainians.
For the Ukrainians.
Okay.
But they have to. They need to change their mindset, right, to do it, right? Because again, Russia's going to do what Russia always does, and which is they just going to keep throwing bodies at it until they just beat you with numbers, right? Until they just deplete the other side, right?
It looks like right now they're doing a good job of it at this moment.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is where I have a lot to say about what that the EU and the United States are doing just enough to keep the war going, but not enough to win it.
That's what I see. I see the same thing, right? Like I thought maybe it's me. I see like my point was early on in this with it. People were like, "This is the war to end all wars is so critical." I said, "Well, then why aren't American troops there?"
Right. Yeah.
If this is really my mindset was, if this is really the war of the worlds and Russia's going to take over the world, and oh my God, well then why aren't American troops there then? If it's that big of a deal, we should
exactly
be throwing every dollar at this.
But
and then, but then don't act that way.
These were the points I were making very early on in the when the war first started. Like going, if you're sitting there trying to make the argument that you don't want to make a move, like what I was saying was all they need to do is move the Fifth Fleet into the Black Sea, right? And just fly a couple and just do. They only have to like fire a shot. This is what people don't understand about the United States military. Is our biggest deterrent is our show of force, 100%. Right? Like we don't even have to fire a shot. We just have to show up, let a couple F-22s fly over, and it's done. Like game, set, match, and Russia will crawl back into the hole it came out of, and so will the rest of the world, because they'll see that like, hey, okay, we were just kidding. We'll go back to whatever. Because the one thing they don't want, that Russia is afraid of, is they don't want to Putin, especially not Russia. Putin is regime change, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to be kicked out of his seat of power, right?
Right.
And President Xi is the same way in China, and who knows what's going on in Iran? That place freaks me out. But of all the three, Iran scares me the most because they just don't care, right? Like their ideology is what moves them. But anyway, like when you go in there with freaking, you move the Fifth Fleet in through the freaking through Turkey and into the Black Sea, and set up of like going, hey, we're going to stay here permanently now because you've pissed us off, and that's a game over, right? Like going, okay, well we screwed the pooch on this one, right?
So let me touch that piece if I could. You feel like we're not trying to win this thing, really. And I agree with you. I think that, to me, it seems obvious that we haven't done all the things that we could have done to win this. And I feel like we've just made this worse in reality, because if we would have done absolutely nothing, then at least the war would be over by now. At least that would be true.
Yeah.
There'd be less dead. At least it will be over. Or we should have jumped in with both feet. Either one, I feel like, was the right answer. I
I
think
think
that we
jumping,
did the
yeah,
worst one.
right. Jumping with both feet would have been like what I would have liked to see. That's the old soldier in me talking, probably. But the thing is also like going, look, here's a big, here- here's a tells for me, right? Like I don't think I think they should have sent maybe, I don't know, $10 billion should have been enough. I guess I don't know what the right number of money for
Right.
aid is, but they sent what, like 50 tanks
No,
and
less.
yeah, I think it was like, I think Germany
It was like
sent like,
30.
yeah, Germany sent like 14 and US sent like 30 and some, and
Yeah.
like Poland sent a handful and some strikers and some this, that, and some freaking rocket launchers and tow missiles and whatever. But it was like dime piece stuff, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, this is another thing like when, where's the ammunition coming for all those pieces of equipment? Right?
Right.
Like, I mean, because anybody, like, this is another of those things that maybe your listeners don't know, is that like Russia and the rest of the world uses a different caliber size
Right. Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
difference. Like, so like take the mortar system. I can speak about the mortar system because
They use
I used to
122
be,
millimeters,
yeah,
and
like for us,
yep,
for us, it's the 60, the 80, and the
yep,
60, the 81, and the 120, right?
yep,
Well, the Russians, they have 82s, 122s,
yep.
and 40 millimeters, where they like, and it's just like going, man, like that, like, so we can't even use their munitions, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
But the
and so
Chinese
it's
use
like,
their munitions.
yeah,
They use the same. So that's something for them. That's a benefit for them, not for us. So yes, I
right,
completely
exactly,
agree. So let me
yeah.
go.
So
Gene says our government profits from war. That's why they're only
mhm.
helping enough to keep the war going. Sad but true. I don't want to believe that, Gene, but man, it does look that way, right? Like it feels bad, but it looks like that's true.
Who was it? Who was it? Was it Eisenhower or Truman that warned against the war
Military
machine,
industrial complex.
the military
That was
industrial complex?
that was
And man,
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower, yeah, and
Yep.
like man, like he was, sadly he was right.
And
Like,
Smedley Butler, the famous Marine general, said, "War is a racket." It
hmm,
was correct also.
yeah,
So Mike
absolutely,
says, ammo is used up. EU can't keep up production. US has used its reserves on this war too, which showed US enemies our capacity to sustain war. Not a good reveal. Well, you're saying something kind of different, Mike. You're saying almost like we're doing this on purpose, almost in a way to kind of reboot and to get the good stuff in. Now,
right.
is no sound bites allowed, right? Are you right? Both right?
Well, okay, so I think after the F-22, as far as the United States is, yeah, in my opinion, now this is just my opinion, and I worked at Lockheed for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like the F-22, in my opinion, is a far more superior aircraft than the F-35.
I think most
Okay,
people would actually agree with that. I think you're right.
yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why only the United States has the F-22.
Yep.
Right? We'll sell the F-35 to every other country on the planet, but only
Well,
we're
because
the
it's
only ones that
way
have.
expensive for what you
Yeah,
get.
that too.
The
Yeah, yeah,
F-35 is a brilliant piece to sell to others because it's
yes,
very expensive for what you get.
yeah, right. And but I think in the next few years you're going to start seeing some um, newer models of military equipment coming out. Like there's going to be some new different rifles coming out and different, all
Yep.
sorts of game
The
changers,
Marine
right, for the United
Corps,
States military.
tanks, I know, is in the future. Drone tanks are in the future. And the
Right,
Marine
and
Corps realize the Marine Corps has got get rid of their tanks. No more tanks in the Marine Corps. Get rid of them.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because you gotta think of like, where is a tank effective,
Yep.
right? And I don't like, I mean, unless you're like storming the freaking Europe, right? Then where everything's relatively flat, where you can use a tank. Otherwise, you need things like Humvees or smaller, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
And gun trucks, right?
Yep.
I think you're going to start seeing different types of helicopters come out
Oh, okay.
that are for personnel carriers, right? They're going to be more stealth designed.
Yeah.
Because we've learned a lot over the last 20 years, I guess, as far as stealth.
This was my I'm gonna give you my tinfoil hat. I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on real fast. I feel like America did this. Okay, I'm not saying it's true. I'm giving you my tinfoil hat conspiracy.
Right.
The deep state recognized that we now know from our 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan how to clear buildings and do urban fighting. We've changed everything up. We know we're better than anybody at that right now, right?
Yep.
But we didn't know how to fight a regular modern war. We didn't know how to do that.
That's true.
So we've allowed the Ukrainians to do this and to fight the Russians so we could learn and rebuild that aspect. Now, I don't have any information on that. I'm just saying that's my tinfoil hat, that we purposely are rewriting all of our manuals now, rethinking all of our warfare now from having experience in a modern day war, which is now trench warfare.
Right. I mean, in a way, I can agree with that. The only thing is that what would have to happen, in my opinion, which I think they're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a move that we see in the future, depending on, I think a lot's going to depend on the next election, right? But the thing is like, you'd have to start getting, like what we did towards the tail end of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, or the Afghanistan war was a complete debacle, but towards the tail end, when we started drawing down our troops, we started like beefing up our advisory roles, right? Where we would send, instead of sending a whole division, we would send a battalion or a brigade, and they'd be hand chosen, like certain units, right? You send a recon team and a mortar team and whatever as advisory roles to like train ups.
Right.
And I think if the real goal for the U.S. was to like kind of relearn that asymmetric warfare, where it's uniformed army against uniformed army, then we would be digging out the old World War II manuals and sending advisory pockets out there to implement those things, right? Like when, hey, this is first, you need to send your this is where Green Berets come, Green Berets, special forces, like their thing is basically to be teachers, instructors, right? They're force multipliers. That's what their primary role is.
Yep.
And they would have to go in and go, hey, we're here to restructure your military, right? Because that's the first thing, in my opinion, that would need to happen for Ukraine is like, hey, we need to restructure your military.
So speaking of that, let me walk down that road if I could.
Okay.
Let me ask your opinion. And I know you don't know everything, but from your view, being there 2 years, now walking away, if you had to guess, what's the future? What happens in the future? What do you think happens? Hold on, before you answer that question, I want to go to my audience real fast. You want to hear that question, audience? Great. Then click the like button, damn it. Click the button that is like. I've been asking you to click it. You're not clicking it. Click the damn button. It does matter. Click the like button. They're going to demonetize me, so do it. It's going to help me to spread this thing. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet this. Just click the retweet button, repost it, re-exit, whatever. Redo the thing. If you want to support me on YouTube, you can. You can either click that join button if you want to, and join is $49 per month. That keeps me doing more of this and less of my day job. So I do more of this if you do that, or you can always super chat me and you can support the show that way. Also works. Get your chat right to the front. All righty. So let me go back. What do you think the future is?
You mind making that smaller? Like maybe make it like.
Yep. What do you think if you had to guess a year from today? Do you think there will be a peace treaty of some way? Do you think the Russians will have won the war? Do you think the Ukrainians will have, fought back? What do you believe if you had to guess a year from today?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with the election, right? And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that everywhere I've been in Europe, right, outside of Ukraine, been to Italy, Denmark, Romania, now Moldova, um, all over the place, right? And all eyes are on the United States with the next election to see
Okay.
what happens with the Ukraine war. I can tell you this: people are getting tired of their governments using sending aid to Ukraine, right?
Okay. They are getting tired.
Be-
Okay.
because
Oh, hold on.
because
Let me ask the question now. If so, do they think if Trump or if Biden wins, one of them is going to end the war, or one's going to throw more money at the war, or what? What's
well,
the
okay, so
mindset?
they think Biden will throw more money at it, and that
Okay.
Trump will end it, right?
Ah, got it.
Eh,
Okay.
Right. And so, and this is where like one of those things where I think is kind of interesting who you talk to, right? If you talk
Okay.
to the younger generations, right, like 25 and below, right? Again, this is outside of Ukraine.
Right.
Then they're more likely to like not really even give a shit
Oh,
about
okay.
with either one way or the other.
Okay.
They all kind of understand that, at least in their opinion, is that the world economy was better with Trump, right? And for them, it seems pretty obvious because there's a good compare and contrast there. You can look at both of them and say, okay, when was my pocketbook easier to
So you're saying
manage?
the people you meet in Europe, the youngsters you meet, that
Hmm.
many of them are hoping that Trump wins because the war will end and they'll have a better economy.
Right, right.
Wow, I would
And
have never
then,
thought that. I would have always thought that the youngsters want the
mhm,
Democrats, right? That's what I would have thought. That you're telling me the
right.
opposite of what I would have thought. Okay.
Well, because see, like that's one of those things that I think is kind of interesting about being over here is that, especially like you, Moldova and Ukraine, is like it's almost like being in 1990s United States, right?
Ah,
Where the younger generations are all have jobs. Like when we were in high school, we all had jobs,
yes.
and so and for $20 I could fill up my gas tank,
Right,
you
right,
you
yes.
know,
I
and
still remember filling up my gas tank for like $15. I can still
exactly.
remember that.
Same
Yes,
here.
yes.
Like, and like I remember being able to afford rent, insurance, and um in groceries for the
Yep,
month on like a paycheck and a half,
yep,
right? And then the rest of the week was just like, okay, the rest of the month was just kind of just partying
yep.
and hanging out with friends because we did shit like we would to, like we're always
Absolutely.
at bonfires, whatever,
All
because we
right.
didn't have computers.
So then let me ask
But
that piece now. I'm kind
yeah,
of curious. What do Ukrainians think about Americans?
well, so when I first got there, I guess it kind of depends because when I
So
first
you think
got
it's
there,
changed over time? It's
yes, it
changed.
has. Yeah,
Ah,
because
okay.
when I first got there, I was for a lot of, especially as you get deeper into Ukraine, I was the only American they'd ever met.
Okay.
Like when they saw me pull out my American passport, they were like going, "Well, I've never seen an American passport before." And it like, but now they all. This is one of those situations where like now I'm like putting myself back in Ukraine. This is where the big separation comes from. The older generations who remember the Soviet era, right? Pre 91, when Ukraine was
Right.
still part of Russia and whatever. They're really again pro Trump because they think he'll end it. Whereas
Wow.
the younger generation, they're more pro Biden because they want both Biden to keep throwing money into Ukraine.
Got
And
it.
and since again, going back to when I was first there, before the United States gave any aid of any type. Man, like there were nice cars, but you would find them like closer to Romania or
Mhm.
Poland or wherever, and as you kind of got deeper, or maybe in Kiev, in the bigger cities, but as you got into like further into like the rural areas, um, they would peter out, and you'd see more junkers, right?
Got it.
Well, now I've been seeing, like, especially the last 6 8 months or so, there were a lot more nicer vehicles like Teslas and whatever,
Ah,
which is baffling to me because I mean their power grid is less stable than ours. So how are they
yes.
charging their Teslas or brand new Audis and
So,
whatever?
so does
And
that mean the youth likes America more?
the youth, they both sides like America more, but it's for different reasons, right?
Oh,
So
got it. Okay. Now that's
right.
clear.
So
Okay.
the older generations remember that it was the United States that kind of helped with with
Getting them out of
Reagan
the
and
Soviet
them.
Union. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so they remember the US helping in the Soviet Union and in that collapse and um their sovereignty. And but the younger generations, just like they have more income,
They
right?
got more
And
stuff?
yeah, they got more stuff. They're getting more freebies, right? Because there's they're working, like coffee shops are open and all this other stuff, but they also have a tendency of getting they can manipulate the system in such a way where they can get an ample amount of
Yes.
a handout, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so
It's nice when Uncle
it's
Joe Biden's writing checks. It's nice.
exactly,
Yes. It's nice.
and this is a but it's not just Joe Biden. It's like other. This is another one of those things where, like, okay, you're talking about tinfoil hat, but like other other countries are kind of doing the same thing, and it's really kind of like what's happening in the United States from what I see from outside looking in is the same thing that's happening in like a lot of other countries where the governments are writing checks while the local economy is in the tanker. And so the
Mm,
population in like Italy or Romania or Poland are like, um, dude, like stop sending money to them and keep it here because
right.
we need it, right?
Right, right, right. Oh, I
And
like what you're saying. Let me do a quick super chat though. Sam,
yeah,
thanks for running on. He says, I love Larry's pizza and baseball stories on inflation. I tell that story. I thank you for that, Sam. I tell the story when I was a kid in the 70s in the Bronx. There was a place called Joe's Pizza. And Joe's
yeah,
Pizza, I remember it's the first time I understood what inflation was. I used to go to Joe's Pizza and I would get a slice of pizza. I was a kid, like 8, right? A kid, you used to go by yourself back in those days, right? Then you have your mom around you. So I go down to the pizza shop and I will buy a slice of pizza. And I remember I gave him 50 cents for the slice of pizza. And he gave me back a nickel. And I was like, no, 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 no. You made a mistake. You got to give me a dime. He said, no, the price went up. I said, what? He said, the price went up. It's not
mhm.
40 cents anymore. It's 45 cents a slice. And I was like, mind blown. Like
Oh yeah,
oh, pizza's 40 cents because I'm 8 and it's always been 40 cents. So therefore it will always be 40 cents a slice.
right.
And it went to 45 cents a slice and my mind was blown.
I remember the first time that I kind of freaked out about inflation was when, again, like I started off as a plumber, and after I graduated, my first job was as a baker in high school,
Mm,
and I got like I don't know like $4 an hour, I think, minimum wage, right?
yep.
Well, I got out of high school, I became a plumber, and when I first became a plumber, I think it was 98, 99, whatever, and I want to say gas prices were like, I don't know, 95 cents a gallon or something like that, 90 cents a gallon. And I remember when they went to like $1.25, and I was going, I can't afford this gas. I had to go ask my
Right,
boss
exactly.
for I had to go ask my boss for a raise, right?
Yes.
Like going, And
Yes.
I was raised in the way, like, you don't ask for a raise. Your boss will see how hard you are working and will give you a
Right.
raise, right?
Right.
Especially in the plumbing industry or like construction world, right? So when I had to walk up and like hat in hand, literally, and ask my boss for a raise because gas prices had gone up to $1.25, I was going like I thought it was the end of the world. And
Yes.
now,
Absolutely.
and,
I
and
wish it
now,
was a
like,
buck 25. I'd be jumping up and
exactly,
down. I'd be
no
jumping up and
joke.
down $1.25. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd go hug the gas station owner. I'd give him a hug. You do that.
exactly.
100%.
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep. So,
All right.
but yeah, man.
So look, I'm going to ask you guys who are watching, do me a favor, guys. Follow Michael on Twitter. He's got a lot of good stuff he's doing, he's talking about, and go buy his book. The link is in Facebook, and the link is also on YouTube. Support him, buy his book. He volunteered rushing over to Ukraine. I appreciate your response, but let me ask the last question. Do you think that a year from now there'll be peace, or do you think, your opinion, just what do you think, or a year from now they'll still be at war? Just your gut.
Well, I want to. Again, I think a lot of it depends on who wins the election.
Yep.
I think if Trump wins, he'll squash everything just because everybody knows that when he says he's going to freaking rocket your ass, he's going to rocket your ass, right? Like, he doesn't sit there and say one thing and do another. He says like, "Hey, these are your options."
I'm gonna make a hot take. I think it
Okay.
doesn't matter who wins next year. Peace. I think
Okay.
Americans are tired of giving money to a war that doesn't end. I think we
Mhm.
did it for Afghanistan for way too long. I think
Right.
Europe is going to get tired of it also. And I think my hot take is by next year, no matter who wins, peace. That's my hot take.
Well,
That's my hot take.
my worry is not just is what happens with, if Russia smells, what happens with China and Taiwan, what happens with Russia, what happens with Iran and Israel, right? And Kim Jong Un fall into all of this,
Well, now you're
right?
going too far. I'm just talking Ukraine, man. You got. I don't know about all
See,
that stuff. I just did
but
Ukraine.
but for me, I can't just say is there peace next year without taking into consideration everything else that's happening globally, right? Because in my mind, all of these things are tied together, right?
Yes,
Like,
but I don't think the average American thinks that way. I think the
okay,
average American says, "I don't care about Ukraine anymore." I think they
right,
just say that. I don't think they think
yeah,
about anything else. I think they go, "Ukraine sucks. I don't want to do it anymore."
yeah. Well,
And
it's war fatigue. Yeah,
yeah, I think it's war fatigue. I think the Americans just
it's
say
been
that.
going on the longest. Yeah, for sure.
So we just find an answer and we just stop because the people are like, "I don't want to play anymore. I don't play
Well, I
anymore."
mean, if my only thing is like, I don't think the Ukrainian people are going to be satisfied with that, right? Like, I don't see an outcome where the Ukrainians just say, "Okay, we're done," and stop, right? Like, there has to be something where both sides come to the table and say, "Okay, this is something we can agree on." But
Here's the thing to remember, and I know you know this. Whatever you might think of Ukraine or not, Ukraine cannot fight without support, without American and European support.
exactly, yeah,
So if whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump, whoever, if they go to Ukraine and go, okay, it shuts off on Thursday, like that's it, it's done. It's nothing else is coming.
yeah,
Period. It's shutting off.
right,
So find a table, find some paper, find a pen, sign something because this is
right,
done. Right? Find the
right.
paper, sign. That's what I believe. And again, I don't have proof of this. This is my gut. I think by next year that happens. They sign something.
Hey, I would like to see.
Yes.
I would like to see both sides just go back into their corners and just be like, "Hey, let's forget this shit happened
That would
and
be amazing.
go back to the way things were when, like, we'll stay on this side of I'll stay on this side of the world and you stay over there." And I
Right.
think yeah. So
Yeah, but yeah. David says, unfortunately, the U.S. government hasn't tried to win a war since World War II. Also
I
true.
agree. I
And
agree with that.
yes.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, the U.S. population has put up with it and let their tax dollars be wasted. It will go on for
Mhm.
longer if Biden wins. I hope you're wrong, David. I hope I'm right. And I hope no matter what, next year it's gone. And Jean agrees. She goes, I hope you're right. I do. I hope it ends. I hope it will. Michael, before we wrap this up, anything you want to bring up? Anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
Well, I think I'll give, like, since you got the link to my book in there, I'll give a little quick,
Please.
like, tell about what life's memorable moments is.
Please.
So life's memorable moments is a memoir, but it's a comedic memoir. Basically,
okay.
I take, like, it's 10 chapters. It's short. It's only like, I don't know, 175 pages or something like that. And I purposely meant it to be short because I know people don't have a lot of time to read anymore. So they're short stories, and they're basically true stories, believe it or not, from when I was 19 to about 24, when I was a plumber.
Okay.
And they're the funniest stories I could remember and jotted down. Like, they're basically pranks that were played on me. They were lessons that I learned, stupid things that I did, little bar fights that I got into that didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted them to. And, you know, like, there's one that's called Friday Night Smurf. You'll have to read that to figure, but basically I ended up being blue. And like things like that. And so, like, it's meant to where I want you to be able to read it and laugh. And, you know, I think each story is like maybe 5 to 10,000 words. So it's just they're meant to be a quick read, something you can just read a chapter and put down, right? Like,
and
it's not so.
On Kindle if you want. Yeah, it's also available on Kindle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get it on Kindle, either one, and that's the link right there. You see in the bottom. It is also on Facebook and also on YouTube. It's on both. Michael, I want to say thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Talk to you again sometime, maybe.
Everyone else who's watching, I want to say thank you so much for watching the show. I will be on tomorrow night with somebody. I'm not sure yet, but I'll be on tomorrow night with somebody. Also Thursday, I will have someone on Thursday in the afternoon, and Friday, Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live, Thursday and Friday at 1 p.m. I will see all of you very soon. Oh, by the way,